What is good, everybody? Today we are doing the new BF-109 Kugelwagen dual boxing kit. I saw this and I had to grab it. I've never been a fan of German aircraft for some reason, but something flipped in me and I saw this kit and said, you know what? I'm into 109s now. I am kind of getting into the idea of dioramas too. And at like $36 that this kit is on Sprue Brothers for, come on, you can't beat that. So I grabbed it and came home from vacation, took a look at these sprues, and was super stoked. I started out by obviously cleaning out these parts, cutting them off the sprues, and building all of the sub-assemblies at once. I like to try and build as much as I can get away with these kits at the very front of the build. Mostly because I just feel like it keeps my momentum going and it's just a little more enjoyable for me. So I've got all my parts ready here. There's a few more parts than you might expect because it's got the exposed engine option, which is just awesome. But I went ahead and got started on this cockpit. Honestly, the detail exceeded my expectations. It's very good. I would say better than the Spitfire Mark I that I've built from them as well. And I make that comparison because they're sort of a similar generation of kit. So grab my gator clips, grab my Amazon wood blocks, and get everything ready for priming. Obviously there's a ton of little parts that need to be primed individually for this kit. I whip out the Gunze PS267, my favorite airbrush at the moment, the Mr. Surfacer Mark I, and I get this bad boy primed up. After that, I come in with the German gray and lay my base coat. It's a little bit flat looking, so I say, you know what, let's make some buff in there and do some highlight work. It's a little bit dramatic if you see it in person, but I am a subscriber of the Dukes Models stage makeup idea for cockpits, where you make it a little dramatic, put it together, and it tones it down. And as I come in with the Vallejos and do the detail work, you can already see that starting to happen. When you put all these parts next to each other, it starts to look cohesive and toned down by the reds, yellows, blues, etc. See, I think it's already coming together. The only thing I did was come in with a layer of sort of accidentally heavy dry brushing. For some reason, I just totally forgot to do a base layer of metallics and hairspray chipping, which is my normal process. But I'm happy with how this came out. I really just liked the look of the cockpit so much that I didn't feel the need to screw with it a ton. And you know, if we're being real, we're not going to see a bunch of it in the final product anyway. The wings were probably the only place that I even needed to sand. That was what I learned about the BF-109, and the reason it's one of the most awesome planes ever, because it has actual channels in the fuselage where most models have seams, making it super easy to build. You'll see the exposed engine here. Easily my favorite part of this build is all held together with magnets so that after construction, you can flip between open and closed engine setup. I'm doing the closed engine setup here because I'm saving an open pose for those potential, diorama foreshadowing thoughts I was telling you about. And once I got it in the black primer, this thing was vadered out. I just thought, damn, the outline of this airframe is just so nice looking that I want to appreciate that for what it is right here. Of course, breaking out the texture templates. I got a little bit of splatter going on, been having some airbrush issues, but that's no big deal. I got the whole airframe textured up and ready for my first layer of RLM 75. I went for the Mr. Color lacquer range here, and I won't lie, primarily because I've got a nice local hobby shop. Shout out Model Citizen Hobbies that I can get these from, and Mr. Color is more affordable than MRP, which is something I normally use. But I laid them down and I honestly was thrilled with these tones. I thought it looked very nice. My only regret here is that when I did the dual layer camo, I masked out the green on top of the gray instead of masking out the shape and painting them all in one layer. And I say this is a regret because it caused me to cover up my pre-shading with the texture templates a little bit. Not the end of the world, live and learn, but kind of a word to the wise, something to keep in mind if you're going to do one of these. the camo was my first attempt at freehand camo on a, no, that's a lie. Well, this was not my first freehand camo, but it was my first one in 48th scale, which was a little nerve wracking. And doing those splotches, I don't want to say it had me shook, but I gained a lot of confidence from it, and I was pretty happy with how they came out. I really wasn't too creative. I just followed the Tamiya booklet example, and once I got the green on top, I was really feeling this plane. I get this color scheme now. It's very attractive. I was sort of envisioning a little bit more of a desaturated, toned down scheme when I first started, but looking at the way the Mr. Colors came out of the bottle, I just had to go with it like this. It was just too good the way it was. I was playing with some options for the camo on the wings, and you'll see I've got a hard edge on one side and a soft edge on the other. The tape ended up being the way to do this camo. You know, I was playing with silly putty first, so I've got that one little bit of a soft edge that I ended up cleaning up later a little bit, don't worry. The only funky part was having to mix this yellow color up for the nose and the vertical, the tail. I mixed the copper with the flat yellow Tamiya per the instructions. Man, it ended up okay, but I wouldn't do it again because the copper has the metal flex in it, you know, the metallic flex. So instead I would hunt down the Mr. Color option for this. But in the end, it turned out okay. And I came in to do the blue stripe on the tail. Keep in mind, you're gonna need some flexible Tamiya tape if you wanna get this compound curve right. So I grabbed the Mr. Color character blue, and I actually I dipped my Tamiya stirring spoon into white a few times and just mixed it up just to lighten it a hair. Hair lighter, and I think I got the tone pretty perfect. And then I came in and sealed it up with the Mr. Color GX100. Now, I'm not trying to get into a gloss before decals debate here today, but realistically, if I don't sandwich my decals between clear below and above them, of, you know, the same clear, I get weird effects. I just do. If anybody wants to chime in with their thoughts on that in the comments, please do. But I said I'm gonna seal this baby up so that I just don't have to worry about it. And once I did that, the decals went on really nicely. See, it hurts to look at this baby and all glossed up for right now, but the effect is worth it. And you hit it with that flat coat later, and oof, it is satisfying. So obviously Tamiya decals get a lot of flack, but I sort of surprisingly figured out a great method. The trick for me, against what you would think, everybody says do many light layers of decal softener. Well, if I do one heavy layer of Gunze Mr. Mark Softer in the beginning and don't hit it again, the decal just melts perfectly into the surface and doesn't get that sort of burnt up splotchiness that if you've used many layers of something hot like Mark Softer you're familiar with. So that's just my experience. Keep that in mind. After sealing them back in, I came in with my favorite flat, the GX114. Hit it with that baby. Keep in mind, the GX114 gets flatter as it cures. So just keep that in mind. And we're ready for weathering. Of course, I am primarily an oil paint guy, and I got my oil paint palette ready to go. Raw umber, dark umber, or burnt umber, the usual suspects. And I got some Payne's gray, medium gray, and light gray on there as well. For some reason, I decided to ignore that entirely and come out with my Mr. Color weathering liquids. I can't even begin to explain that choice to you. So I came in to do a pin wash. I just wanted to get a little light touch going and see where it went. You can always build up, but you can't go backwards. That turned into a wash over the whole surface, and you can see the subtle difference it makes, you know? It's a little dirty, a little less saturated. I liked it enough that I went over the whole plane with that wash for one single pass, and of course blended it in with my favorite smushed up blender brush. That wasn't the end of it though. If you like your planes a little cleaner, that could be the end of it for you for sure. The model looked really nice at this point, but you know, I like them on the dirty side, so I kept going and added a little bit of greasy, grimy, dirty tones around the areas that the pilot's gonna walk on. Obviously, dirt's gonna collect. Dotted a little bit of Starship filth on there to get that wing root dirtiness. You can't go wrong with that. And honestly, I had to think for a long time about what approach to take with this model, because it was just stymieing me for some reason, much more than say like the P38. It wasn't clear to me what direction to go in. But when that happens, just do what I did. Go in, choose some light tones, and slowly build them up. Because if you do that, you're never going to regret it and feel like you went too far. And this is the perfect example of that here. I'm going in and blending some oil dots to take it a little further, because that's what I wanted, and I had room to do that still. You notice, you see those little reflective patches from the oil paint? They dry up and go away. Don't worry, they don't stay like that. And another good example is adding the raw umber, adding another line of Starship filth into the panel lines, and starting to do some basic streaking and blending at that point. I gave the same exact treatment to the propeller, fade that baby up, a little bit of... Alright, after adding a little bit of streakiness, I made a big change, and I came in with the Prismacolor Silver pencil. I also forgot to lay a chipping layer on the exterior of the plane. So I went ahead and I got one of these Prismacolor pencils, and honestly, I liked it a lot more than I thought it would. Hairspray chipping is probably still my technique of choice, but in a pinch, this is an acceptable solution, I would say. The key is, don't draw the chips on, just lightly drop the tip of the pencil onto the paint, because it comes off much more easily than you think. Just dab it on there very lightly. But what I will say is, for adding those really light, discolored scratches, this is maybe a little bit better for that. And not to mention small places like canopies where it just isn't really feasible to do hairspray chipping. And you'll see the hairspray chipping already, the chipping pencil already made a big difference. Next, it was time to come through and do my exhaust stains with a pretty standard black-brown mix. I didn't want to go too crazy on these, sort of keep in mind with the rest of the weathering scheme, but I'm happy with how they came out. Made them a little darker close to the engine, and then fan it out as I go. You look at the plane here, and I'm pretty pleased with how it's come together, especially considering I wasn't sure what to do for the weathering on this piece. That left the bottom of the plane, which is really the most fun as far as the weathering goes. And please let me apologize in advance. I was messing with my camera settings and I screwed up this portion of the video a little bit. So it gets the idea across, but it doesn't show it as beautifully as I wish it did. We live and learn, right? But I started off with a Payne's Gray wash on the bottom. The Payne's Gray really interacted with the color scheme of this plane just gorgeously. I was very pleased with it. And after adding my wash and kind of dirtying up the bottom in general, I was able to come in and do some Starship filth, some raw umber, and via my reference pictures, dirty up the specific areas that needed it. Obviously around the drop tank rack, around the radiator flaps, around the gear, are all places that mud, dust, and dirt are going to build up. So we keep going with that, adding in some earth tones, some greasy engine oil tones, and slowly, layer by layer, building up this effect so that you never feel like you went too far and you gotta wipe it off. Oils come off for sure, but you don't want to have to do that, you know? we want to move forward, not backwards. So I add in my final little bit of engine grease, grime, and I move towards the back. Again, please find some reference pictures for this. You think you can imagine how it looks, but it often looks different than that. And once I had that done, of course, gotta come in with the splatters. Splatter gang, check in. don't sleep on the splatters. So a little bit of washing on the bottom, and you'll see that I'm very happy with the way the bottom of this plane turned out. I think it's the best bottom of a plane I've ever done. I regret the video thing, but hey, live and learn. Alright, now I've got the glamour shots coming up in just a second here, but before that I want to take a moment to thank you guys for watching. It really means a lot, and if you enjoyed what you saw hanging out with me here today, please do leave a like and subscribe and maybe even comment. I know everybody says this, but it genuinely makes a huge difference, and every subscriber that signs up really makes my day. So thank you once again, guys. Let's finish up the weathering on the bottom of this bad boy and see how she turned out.